Much for joining us for this webinar. I'm so excited to introduce Liam Gildea, who lives with bipolar II for the last 20 years and is author of the new book, High Life, Low Life, Living with Bipolar Disorder. Thank you so much for joining us, Liam.
Thanks a million. So I'm just going to start with a PowerPoint slide, the general introduction. So that's my new book there. That's me trying to smile along with it. So the new book is called High Life, Low Life, Living with Bipolar Disorder. I'll go into more detail on what the book is about as I go through the slides. So that's just a screenshot of the book. So I'm just going to start off, just as a general, it's more of a basic kind of explanation. What is bipolar disorder? So for me, what I would say bipolar disorder is an unusual shift in mood, severe depression, negative feelings. So there's two main streams of bipolar disorder. So there's bipolar 1 and there's bipolar 2. So the main differentiation between the two of them is the level of elated feelings. So the elated feelings for bipolar 1 is manic, and the elated feelings in bipolar 2 is hypomanic. Difference between the two of them is generally in bipolar 1, the mania escalates into psychosis and sometimes hospitalization. For bipolar 2, it's hypomania, so it's not as extreme. It may not be as noticeable, but it's still, the person has the bipolar 2 condition, they still have elated feelings, but just not quite the extent. So I'm bipolar 2. So I fall into the category of hypomania. So how does hypomania represent for me? So for me, hypomania, one of the first symptoms that starts off is rapid speech. So what is rapid speech and how does it differ from normal speech? So in a normal two-way conversation between two people, it's just a normal conversation. When I'm hypomanic, when I have rapid speech, it's quite direct. So it's more me talking at a person rather than having a normal conversation with them. It's loud. It's without stop. So when I'm like that, I could talk for 2 to 3 hours non-stop. I could more or less talk to the wall, really. So what trouble does that lead to? So in the past, I've run up phone bills for 500-600 euro, just not being able to control the amount of time I was talking. So in some circumstances, I could be talking for maybe 16-17 hours over 2 weeks basis, just to lots of different people. So I would be like that I would call people I hadn't seen maybe in 10 or 11 years, and just excess speech. Another symptom of hypomania is overspending. So when you're in that state, people tend to spend more money. So you spend excessive amount of money on clothes, on maybe gambling, on drink, on all them kind of different things. So you spend any money you have. So I was probably fortunate that I didn't have 20 grand sitting in my bank account because I'd have spent a lot of it. But any money I did have, I blew it all. You have a reduced need for sleep. So when I'm hypomanic, I could spend maybe 2 to 3 hours sleep a night would be enough because I have excess energy, so I don't need the sleep. Or that's what I think. So, like I said, there, you have the life of the party, you have excess energy, you have so many different ideas going on in your head, you have great plans. Often people in hypomania state, they will maybe start 10 or different plans, sometimes the ideas are a bit crazy, but they never get around to finish any of them. So basically they're hopping. So in a hypomanic phase, you're hopping from one idea to the next to the next. So there's no real order. Poor concentration. The longer the hypomania lasts, the worse the concentration gets. And I'll explain the symptoms then on the other side for the depressive episode. Increased libido. So increased online dating, just wanting to sleep with people more often. It's just a symptom of the condition. Other symptoms then would include irritability. So the longer the hypomania goes on, the more irritable and passive aggressive the person can get. So what does this lead to? So it can lead to trouble at work, falling out with colleagues, can lead to trouble in relationships, just being very unstable. When somebody's in that mania, it's hard to be in a relationship with them. I would say they're more or less a loose cannon. The thing about hypomania is, though, if you didn't know me individually, you'd probably just think he's quite grandiose, he's a bit arrogant, he's loud, he's abrasive. So if you didn't know me, you could be just be seeing that that's my character type. But if friends and family would know that that wouldn't really be my, I suppose, normal line of behavior. So for family and friends, it would be quite evident that I would be acting unusual. So here's some pictures of me in hypomania. Like there's nothing really there that, sorry, there's nothing there that really looks, that's me taking a picture for online dating, I think. You know, I don't look unwell. So I think that's one of the big things with bipolar is that just because you don't look unwell doesn't mean that you're not unwell. And I think that's probably one of the key things that distinguishes bipolar from a lot of other conditions. Like if you're schizophrenia, you know, there's clear evidence that something is wrong. Probably as well with bipolar 1, there is the psychosis probably happen, but with bipolar 2s, it's not that evident. Like I said, it could just be seen as a character type. Depressive symptoms, I think as a society, we're more comfortable with understanding these. It's generally the mania and the hypomania that people find it hard to get a grasp of. So suicide ideation. So for me, when I was going through bipolar episodes, the suicidal thoughts were with me every day. Every minute of the day I was awake and just there. I couldn't really do anything about them. So a lot of the time I would try and busy myself, but the thoughts would still be there. The difference between suicide ideation and actually taking your own life is suicide ideation is wanting to be dead but not having any concrete plans to take your own life. For the 95% of the time, that's what my suicide wishes were. There has been a suicide attempt in 2009, but most of the time it was just in the wanting to be dead category. Inability to function. So this will be a key distinguishing factor between mild to moderate depression to be it severe depression or severe depressive episode in bipolar 2. So when I'm really, really low, I find it very difficult to function. I find small things really, really challenging, like having a shower, go and get my hair cut. These all, I manage them, but they seem like really, really big deals. Making a phone call seems like an ordeal. Everything, my anxiety is heightened. So everything seems really difficult. So like I said, their unemployment, when I'm in a depressive episode, I can never work. I'm just my concentration isn't there. It wouldn't matter what the job would be, I'd be overwhelmed because I just cannot function. Chronic fatigue, that's linked into the insomnia there as well. So basically, you're tired because you can't sleep. There's just it's just like I can go 4 to 5 nights without sleeping, not on any medication. Feelings of worthlessness. Anybody that's probably suffered any form of depression, they'd be able to grasp what that is. So you just feeling kind of ashamed, feeling just worthless, you know, you don't deserve anything, that you kind of feel like you're a piece of dirt, or you feel like that you're just a nuisance for most people, you're a hindrance. And then unemployment, like I touched that. So yeah, so I think the difficulty with bipolar is that we'll say I might have a depressive episode for 9 months, and then all of a sudden I start feeling really, really well. And it's hard to admit to yourself then that there's an issue. So a key thing with bipolar is misdiagnosis. So I was experiencing symptoms of bipolar back in 1998, 99 when I was a teenager. I wouldn't really have known what was going on. I just thought it was just not being a teenager. being really low. I just thought that was just normal for me. I had shown maybe some elated mood, some small bits of hypomania in school at 14 and 15, just kind of being at a heightened level of excitement. Yeah, and just causing a bit of trouble in school. So finally, 10 years later, I eventually went to my GP in 2009, and I presented myself to him as depressed. So I was treated accordingly. I wasn't aware of, I was having hypomanic episodes, but I wasn't actually aware what was going on at the time. So when I did go to the doctor, I genuinely just thought I was depressed. And like I said, they put me on antidepressants. I never, as I said there, I never reported my elated mood. The thing about that is that's what like makes it difficult for bipolar, and for most people, they're 5 to 10 years waiting for a proper diagnosis, and it's mostly down to the person with the illness themselves because they're not telling the GP, the psychiatrist, the full story. So if you're a bipolar person then and you're treated with antidepressants, so what's the risk? So if you've normal depression, you're treated with antidepressants and you'd expect that it would help the mood. For a bipolar person, if you treat them with antidepressants, you will lift the mood, but then the mood will get elated, and it will eventually you'll crash. So it's just the wrong medication. So eventually in 2013, I got a proper diagnosis. So like I said, I got a bipolar II diagnosis. What's the difference between the medications? So the medication for bipolar illness is mood stabilizers. So I take medication 3 times a day. So I take a medication called Lamictal. So this is a mood stabilizer with an antidepressant base. So I take that twice a day. So what that does is it prevents the depressive episodes. Then I take a medication called quetiapine, or a lot of people know it as the label Seroquel. So I take this medication late in the evening, and what this medication does is it medicates the highs, so it stops them highs from happening. So when I take my medication, I can keep my bipolar condition well under control. But in the past, I have made some poor decisions in relation to my condition. I have come off medication without medical advice. Both the first time I did this was 2014, and I just felt I didn't want to be on medication. I was early 30s. I felt there was a stigma to taking medication. Just didn't want to be on it for the rest of my life. So I came off it without telling anyone, and everything was okay for about 6, 7 weeks. Then unknown to me, I started getting a bit high. The hypomania started creeping in, and 7 or 8 months later, then I was back in a really, really bad depressive episode. So I went back into my psychiatric daycare center, and I was treated again. So this time round, I got myself well again after a year. And a couple of months after that, I decided that, okay, I'll stay on some of the medication. I won't take it all. So I halved my dose. But 8 months after that, I was really sick again. So it was the typical cycle for about 6, 7 weeks, went hypomanic and then went depressed. So that was 2017. And that was my last depressive episode, but it lasted for 18 months. So I finally, saw the light and realized that this coming off medication was a really bad idea, and it came at a very high cost. It wouldn't be unique to me coming off medication. 90% of bipolar people across the world will come off medication at some stage. There's learning in it. I think nobody wants to be on medication long term, but and some people have really bad side effects. I'm fortunate. I know for some people the quetiapine, the Seroquel, might put on 5 or 6 stone in weight. That causes other health problems, so they may have to come off it. It can be difficult for people to find the right medication. There are different medications. There is lithium, which is a salt that came out in 1949, and that was the go-to drug for back then. They call it manic depression. So just up to 1987, it was called manic depression, and from that date, then they just renamed it bipolar. So there are different medications you can take. I'm fortunate that the mix I'm on at the minute has kept me stable the last 3 years. So on the positives, look, it's, mental illness, it's always looked from a negative point of view, but the reality is, in my circumstances anyway, I haven't had an episode in 3 years. Like I said, I take my medication every day. I'm fortunate enough, there's very few side effects. I was an accountant, on and off for 13, 14 years, excuse me, and I decided when I got myself well that maybe I should do something that I actually have an interest in, something like mental health. So I started volunteering for a bipolar foundation here in Ireland called Aware. So I just started doing some work for them, doing some kind of media work and radio interviews and just presentations at different bipolar events. And that led then into a paid role. So I'm a Living Well facilitator, so it's a Living Well program. It's actually comes from Stanford University in America. And so I'm a facilitator on that program, and it's for people with long-term illness. That's my day-to-day job. I do that 3 days a week, and that's something I really enjoy. And it's nice to be doing something that is rewarding, and it's nice to see that the experience I've had over the past 20 years be relayed to help these people on this course. And like I said, it's for anybody with long-term illness, be it physical or mental, but it definitely helps when I'm sitting on this course that I understand what it's like to be ill. It's led to my book. So I wrote this, started writing this book 2 years ago, and it took, well, I suppose the book was 20 years in the making, but I started writing it about 2 years ago. And a lot of my friends had said to me, there's a book in you. There's a lot of funny stories from the hypomania stories, and then you've the knowledge of the depressive stories. So I wrote the book. I'm also helping as peer support. So I'm doing a course in college. So I'll be a qualified peer support worker. So that's a qualification where you can act as a peer support worker for a person with mental health issues. And it's given me newfound confidence. It's allowed me opportunities to do stuff like this, do radio interviews, lots of different stuff with media. So I would have been quite a shy person. So this, it's funny how the way things work out, but the illness has been the making of me now. There's so many positives that came out of it. I have a level of empathy about me. So like I said, I understand with people going through hard times. I know I've been there. There's lots of different people that have a bipolar illness locally that like bipolar can never be cured, but it can be managed. So I can act like as a signposting service when people, particularly younger people, because if the one regret I would have would have been not getting treatment when I was 19 or 20. So if I can help somebody along, that's great. So the book itself, the book is kind of split into three. So it's a third what I would call depressive stories, a third hypomanic stories. So it's stories like getting funny stories, online dating, Tinder, getting involved in fights, just funny incidents, getting involved with the police, lots of just funny incidents that happened. The other third of the stories then are depressive stories. So just stories that kind of demonstrate how low I was. And then the rest of the book is some theory about bipolar. The book itself isn't in chronological order, so it doesn't need to be read from start to finish. I believe that you could understand what bipolar illness is by just reading the stories on their own. So the stories are separate identities. So you don't, like I said, you don't have to read the book from front to back. Just pick out stories. You can look through the index. You can pick out stories that might interest you. Yes, the book is for people with bipolar illness, but it's a lot broader than that as well. It should be of an interest to anybody with any mental health condition, or really even just maybe as a teenager dealing with low self-esteem, or looking at, I've done loads of different types of therapies, looking at cognitive behavioral therapy, understanding medication. And the book itself is on the curriculum for several universities here in Ireland, and hopefully in the new year it'll be in all universities. And then it's also in all the local libraries here in Ireland. There's 112 libraries, so not in them all yet, but hopefully in the new year it will be. So the book itself, I'm conscious there could be people here from different countries. If you wanted to buy the book, if you're in the USA, you can see there, and it's on Amazon.com. In Ireland or England, you can buy the book straight off my website there. So it's www.buythebook.ie. And if you follow that link, or even if you just go into the website, or even if you type in my name into Google, the links will come up. And it's also on Amazon.co.uk. So I know I've had people buy it from Spain initially and France. It's also available on Amazon in Australia, and it must be available on Amazon in South America as well, because I've seen a couple of purchases from Brazil. So yeah, so look, it's been a great journey. I wouldn't have thought at this time 4 years ago. I remember talking to my psychiatrist, and she was saying that I actually looked like I had Parkinson's. So sometimes I forget how ill I was, but the medication is part of the solution. It's not all the solution. It's important that you do all the right things, just like for anybody else for good mental health. So it's important. One of the cornerstones of bipolar is good sleep. Good diet helps, lots of exercise, lots of clean living. It can vary for people. On average, they reckon it's 70% chemical based and 30% environment. So I would say probably for me it was probably 80% chemical medication, 20% environment. Somebody else, it could be 80% environment and 20% 20% chemical. I've been fortunate because the medication works. I have from other forums, I kind of said that you can come the right side of this illness, and I had some kind of interesting feedback in a way that somebody said to me, is there a right side of this illness? And other people had said to me, they have bipolar 40 years and they've been trying different medications, and they take the medications and they're still having high episodes and low episodes. So it's not bulletproof. It's probably like the vaccine for COVID. Maybe, it seems to work really well for me. I would have been a person that would have been very anti-medication. I can only go by my own experience that it seems to help my form of bipolar. Like I said, there's bipolar 1 as well. There's other kind of rapid cycling bipolar, which is cyclothymia, they call it. So you're kind of like going from maybe in low 3 days, being high 4 days. It's not the lows and the highs aren't quite as extreme, but it's still a condition. So I know from talking to people that rapid cycle, they find sometimes the medication doesn't help. It should help, but they're not gold, they're not magic bullets either. Like, I still have to work hard. Sometimes I think the longer I'm episode free, the harder I have to work. Obviously you have to be aware of your work stress. Stress can be a factor for another episode. There is no saying that I will never have another episode. It's an endemic illness that, like, if I come off my medication in the morning, I'll be really sick. So you can't cure it, but like most illnesses, I think you can manage it. I think the book will help people with the condition to understand it. Speaking to people that they're finding it interesting, people who have siblings or maybe a parent or a cousin with bipolar, they find it very it educates them, because there isn't that many bipolar books out there. It'd be a unique book in Ireland. I think it's the first bipolar book in Ireland. 100% it is from the perspective that I've written of it. I know of probably 4 or 5 other well-known books across the world, So like in Ireland, there's 45,000 people with bipolar. I think with the level of stigma and everything, there's so many of the people that just don't come forward and just put up with it. And then there's another high cohort of people that actually get the wrong diagnosis. So yes, that's me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Liam. That was a great presentation. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your journey. And we're so happy that you're here with us and can spread your insight and share your journey with all of us to inspire us as well. So now we're going to open it up to some questions from the audience and questions from us. So if you have any questions for Liam, feel free to leave them in the chat or on the Facebook Live. And I'll start with one of my own questions. So, how has writing played a role in your recovery? Has it been therapeutic, cathartic? I think it's really awesome that you've been sharing your story through writing, and I would love to know more.
Yeah, I think writing has had. I was never really one for journaling, even though it is recommended. There is a lot of science behind it. I have found the writing therapeutic. I've enjoyed writing it. I did it like a lot of people would say to me, God, it must have been very intensive to write it. It wasn't really, I could write maybe 2 or 3 chapters, come back 6 weeks later, write a couple of chapters. Sometimes ideas came to me, other times they didn't. But yeah, it definitely kind of made me stand back from it and, take just like from a third person point of view, just forget that it was me. It's allowed me to educate myself more about the illness. The more I know, the more I learn about bipolar, the more I realize I don't know too much about it. There's just so many different strains of it, and it's such a unique condition. People experience it differently. But yeah, I always think like I have noticed that my clarity of thought since I've started writing has been far better. Um, and sometimes just seeing all this, like I just started off in a Word document, just sometimes seeing something written in front of you, not that it draws a line under it, but it probably acts as a really good reminder for me that if I do kind of feel at some stage in 4 or 5 years time that, oh look at I'm stable 7 years, surely I can come off the medication, that the book is there. It's anecdotal evidence of the damage I've done to myself. So yeah, so I hope that answers your question.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. Thank you for that. Um, you mentioned that you have some funny stories. Is there any one that in particular that comes to mind that you'd like to share?
Um,
Save them for your book.
yeah, yeah. There was one episode where I was out on a night out with a friend of mine, John, and we were walking down the town, and I was a bit manic at the time. I was hypomanic, and there was a boy racer, as we called them in Ireland, where the kind of a real souped up engine, and you could hear him heading through the town. And we were standing outside the takeaway, and I had a bottle of water in my hand, and I flung the bottle of water at the windscreen of the car. And of course, the two guys jumped out, and my friend John stopped one of them from hitting me. He couldn't stop the other guy, and he knocked me out. And I thought the night couldn't get any worse, but I was walking back to sleep in the car, and then I realized I'd left my iPhone behind me in the takeaway, so I ran back, and my iPhone was gone. So then we were back, and we were sleeping in the car, and next thing the police knocked on the window and started asking me a load of questions, and of course they were suspicious because my lip was all busted up, and they were saying to me, what are you doing? How come you're sleeping here in a car park? And they asked me to get out of the car, but the electrics in my car were gone, so I couldn't get out. And then they asked me to open my boot at the trunk of my car, and I couldn't because it was all electric. So then they felt that I actually had drugs in the car, and they wanted to confiscate the car. Eventually, I was able to climb out the window of the car and climb into the back seat, to pull open the back of the car to show them that there was no drugs in the car. So yeah, so it was a ridiculous night, and that's typical hypomania. Getting yourself into a fight, being forgetful, getting into trouble with the police. I was fortunate that they didn't take the car. It's funny looking back, but I wasn't too happy the next morning, waking up in the car, busted lip, iPhone gone, $500, whatever they are, gone. And yeah, so that was probably, there's lots more in the book, but that's probably one that my friends enjoy telling me all the time. It's quite funny.
That sounds like a pretty bad night. Oh, just a
Yeah,
series of unfortunate events.
yeah. It is. It's funny though when you look back at it.
Hmm. So, how did you think, because you've come such a long way, how do you think that proper diagnosis in 2014 changed your life? Is there anything in particular that stands out to you?
Yeah, I was fortunate. I had very good psychiatric care, so I had a very good doctor. So I think it's important to have a good doctor. So he was able to identify the condition. I was fortunate in the part of Ireland I'm in that the services were good. So I had day-to-day access to a daycare center where I could like just call over for a few hours, do my therapy, talk to my psychiatric nurse and psychiatrist. So I think it suited me better than actually staying in a mental health hospital. It wasn't something I wanted. I just felt it was easier for me. Yeah, look, like I said, the psychiatric nurse I had was also a qualified counselor, and she was able to, just tease through me once we got my medication right, and she was able to help me to go through cognitive behavioral therapy. And obviously, I ended up. It was really over a 5-year period going in and out of that centre because I was coming off medication so much. But yeah, getting the diagnosis, even though I got the diagnosis in April 2013, and even though there was a couple of stumbles along the way with me coming off medication, it was still key because it was, I got my medication right. I was at a level then that I could function. I was at a level that I could have a relationship, not be isolated from my friends. I was at a level where I could go back to university or work, yeah, it's been life changing. Like without the proper diagnosis, I'd never been well. In my own head, I would have thought I was well, but I would have just been hypomanic. So yeah, okay, it took me 5 years to get to grips with the diagnosis, but still, the diagnosis in April 2013, that was the turning point because at that stage I had bipolar 14 years. Oh yeah, so I was kind of lucky enough because generally the longer you have the condition untreated makes it harder to make full recovery. So that's what I'm always saying when I'm doing peer support for younger people. Like if you're 18, 19 and you get your bipolar diagnosis, it makes life so much easier. You'll have a far better chance of getting a handle on it. It won't be like me being 34 years of age and still not on top of it. So yeah, I'm 38 years of age now. So yeah, it took me to 35, but still I'll go back to April 2013 as the key date for recovery.
Awesome. I think that's just so great that no matter how far along on your mental health journey you are, that you're still able to be a great role model and show that recovery is possible. Uh,
Yeah, and
oh, go ahead.
yeah, it's like, I had 20 years experience of it. For a long time I just tried to hide it and just forget about it. And I didn't want people knowing my own business, and I didn't want people knowing I had a mental illness. But since I got myself well, I kind of said, look, at you have 20 years of experience. Like I said, if the book just helps one person from maybe stopping them from taking their life, or just give them some encouragement to stay in it, because it's a horrible illness at its worst. It really is horrible. And I'd have liked, if I was 21, 22, I would have liked somebody like myself now to just say that, there is a possibility of living a great life. And I think when people are particularly in the depressive episodes, they lose hope and they think they'll never be well. But I don't, I always say that, and my doctor would say the same thing, the episodes are temporary, not permanent. But yeah, you have to work hard to get the condition. But I always say like that nothing will really, obviously, if there's a bereavement in the family or something like that, it's going to be really challenging. But outside of that, once you come to terms with the illness and you can manage it, you'll be really battle hardened. So, when other difficulties happen at work, and there'll always be ups and downs in life. You might be at work, you might be having somebody trying to bully you. But none of that type of stuff is, you're just going to be so mentally strong that small little things like that, like if the car blows up morning, it won't really be as big of a setback because you can always say, oh look, it's a small setback, but relatively speaking, they're going through years and years of depressive episodes. It's all change.
How have you gone through those? If you face those setbacks, do you have any tips or things that you fall back on to help you get through those hard times and rough patches?
Um, Obviously, to get help, I think like you need to be involved with mental health services because it's unfair to think that your family would be able to help you because you just don't have the qualifications. It's like asking them here, to be a lawyer and ask them to help you sell a house. They don't have the skills, and how would they? They don't have the personal experience. So you need really a good support network, and in that support network, you need psychiatric help. And when you're going through them periods of suicidal thoughts and that, you need a professional talking to you, 5 days a week if you can, just to keep encouraging you, just to keep telling you, the medication is working. Because sometimes the professionals can see the medication working before you can. So I know, like at the start of my depressive episodes, I wouldn't really be able to hold a conversation. But maybe 3 months in, then when I'm on my medication, all of a sudden I'm having small conversations with people. I wouldn't notice that I'm getting better, but my psychiatrist would. So you need that support network. Obviously, it helps as well to have good friends. Tell your friends about your condition. Tell your family about your condition. So, like I have WhatsApp groups and that, and the lads now they well understand my condition, and they know if I'm sending WhatsApp at 4 o'clock on a Sunday morning that there's something wrong. And they'll let my fiance know. Liam is he's acting on, you know, yeah, good support network. Just being honest. As hard as it is, try and get up in the morning. I know that's really difficult, but even the longer you lie in bed, the worse it's going to be for you. So even if you just get up and sit on the couch all day and watch Ellen over in America or whatever you watch up there, who else is over there? Oh, Oprah or someone like that. I think Jerry Springer. I don't know if he's still on, but yeah, even if you're sitting down watching Jerry Springer for the whole day, better than lying in bed. Anything is better than lying in bed. And like I know a lot of the time when you're really depressed, your appetite isn't great. So just try and eat small bits. Just maybe like small sandwich. Don't be trying to eat big dinners. And anything I'm saying here, it's just what I was told by a psychiatric nurse or psychiatrist. I've been, God, in the space of the last 8 years, I've seen so many therapists, quacks, cognitive behavioral therapists, counselors. I've seen them all. And I think from seeing every one of them, I have, I've been able to take bits from them all. And so I'm kind of like a rounded person that's probably had too much therapy. But funny enough, now I haven't had therapy in 3 years, but I wouldn't be afraid to go back to it. I think the main thing with therapy is you need to be well to do it. So, if you've been off medication for 6 months and you're right in the middle of a depressive episode, no point doing counseling or psychology or anything like that because you won't have the concentration. So generally, you're going to need to be back on your medication for 4 or 5 months. You're going to need to be somewhat stable because if you're not stable, you're really, really depressed, you're not going to be taking in any of it. Or if you're really, really high, you won't have concentration. So when you're going to do the cognitive behavioral therapy, counseling, whichever ones you think, cognitive behavioral therapy seems to be proven. It seems to help people with bipolar. That's what the scientific evidence would say. So obviously that's something you could look at. You're going to have to just stick in. I know you're going to have to just, it's difficult and I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. At its worst, it's horrific. And I know that. But for anybody sitting in here watching that has bipolar, there is hope. And, if I can do it, so can you. It's just a matter of educating yourself about the illness. And as psychiatrists said to me before, you need to become an expert. So you need to know bipolar illness inside out. Or even if it's just that you go to, like, there's meetings here in Ireland, there's aware meetings, there are bipolar foundations, probably something similar to yourself. You know, just get talking to other people with bipolar illness as well, and get yourself good medical treatment. So the main thing is get treatment.
Do you have any tips to help people stay on those medication? Like, do you have a certain schedule that you stick to, or anything like that to help you keep regular with making sure you take your medication?
Yeah, there's loads of medication apps on Android or iPhone, whatever phone you're using. Um, I think one is Med Plus, but basically it's an app where, like, I know a lot of people maybe set 3 or 4 alarms on the phone, but this app just allows you to input all your times into the app. And so we say I take my medication maybe at 8 a.m., 12 p.m. and 11 p.m. at night, but I'm usually working at 12 p.m. So a lot of the time I forget, only that I just get a notification on my phone. And then when you take it, you just click you log it on your phone. So then, or sometimes what used to happen to me would be I'd forget whether I took my medication or not. But with the app, not alone does it give you the alarm, but it tells you then, you log at the time that you took it. So, you know, if you're looking over a period of 2 or 3 days and you think to yourself, Jesus, did I take my medications the last few days? You'll know through your phone. Yeah, so what I do is I take my medication first thing I get up in the morning. The afternoon one is the big one. That's the one I'm more likely to forget, and also the one at night, because the medication I take at night does have a nice side effect of sedating me, so it makes a night's sleep a lot easier. I'll always know if I forget to take my medication at night, because I'll wake up the next day and I'll just feel really, really groggy. Um, what else would I say? You know, the side effects will wear off. I know for the quetiapine, a lot of people experience excessive tiredness. I did at the start, but once your body gets used to the medication, that will go. Obviously, I'll still always probably be a small bit more tired in the morning than most people would, but find cold showers great. So it's actually a friend of mine from Mexico. He started telling me about these cold showers. It's this Hoff, his name, I can't think of his first name. Wim Hof, I think he is. He's out in Holland, and he's spoken about cold therapy. And between a cold shower and a cup of coffee, that bit of tiredness in the morning won't be long. Because I know a lot of people say to me, like, I take 450 megs of that tablet. I know a lot of people say they take 300 of it and have to come off it because it's just making them too tired. But I think there is a way around that. Obviously, you have to have a good lifestyle to do that. Um, there are difficulties with medication. I'd be patient with it, just because the first set of medication doesn't work. Like I said, Lamictal and Seroquel has worked really well for me. It may not work for somebody else. Lithium might work for somebody. There's so many different types of medication that can be tried. I suppose lithium is generally the staple. I think the older you are, the you're diagnosed. Now, there was talk that I'd switch over to lithium, but to be honest, because I'm so stable, we kind of said, what's the point, you know? Um, and I know with lithium, it goes, it's a bit different. It goes through your kidneys, because all other medication goes through your liver. But yeah, so that's something you have to be aware of. You'd have to take bloods 4 times a year, and it's unusual with lithium is it's a salt, so they just have to find the right amount that's not toxic. Very, and you'll often hear people saying they call it the therapeutic dose. But the therapeutic dose can be different for different people. So for me, it's 400 megs of um, Lamictal. For somebody else, it might be just 200. Same for the Seroquel. For me, it's 450. Maybe for somebody else, it'd be 300. Like, what they would have found with me was when I was on the 300 Seroquel, I was still getting high, so it wasn't enough. That's my tip.
Thank you. Awesome. I loved especially your tip about taking cold showers. That's so unique. Like, I know when I jump in the shower and it's too cold, it just wakes me up automatically. Do you
Yeah.
have any coping strategies or tools that you found had helpful beyond medications or therapy? Just like daily tips or tricks like that?
Yeah, just keep a good routine. Obviously keep a good sleep routine. So your body really, your brain works off they call it the Caribbean rhythm. So the more stabilized you can keep your sleep pattern, the better. So I know it's difficult, but for the 7 days of the week, I know it's more difficult at the weekend. But if you can in and around go to bed at the same time, but it's very important to get up at the same time. So I always used to like sleeping until 10 a.m. on a Saturday or Sunday, but I have trained myself now to be up around half seven, quarter to eight. So that's the time I get up every morning. I go to bed in around the same time. The sleep is essential for bipolar. Like, um, like some people can work off 7 hours, but I would say for a bipolar person, you're definitely talking minimum eight. It could be eight from 8 to 9.5 though, because that medication is strong. So you're going to need probably for that condition, you're just going to need a lot of sleep. So number one is sleep. Exercise obviously helps. Just keeping a good routine. Drinking, excessive drinking would be an issue. I drink from time to time. I find that if I drink a lot, I'm very sick the next day. It doesn't mix with medication well. But I'm never at a stage that I think somebody can't have a drink or two. So, like if I'm sitting on a beach out in Spain, I'm going to have a drink or two, but I won't have a six or seven. And that's, I would think, like you just have to be careful. Like obviously, if you're an alcoholic or if you have a drug addiction and you have a bipolar illness, then you're fearing into dual diagnosis, which is far more challenging to treat. I was probably lucky that I didn't have a drink problem or a drug problem, because it's harder to treat somebody with bipolar that has a drug problem or a drink problem, because you don't really know where the illness starts and where the drug issue or the alcohol issue ends. So yeah, like it would it helps your chances tenfold not to drink. Like if you're a problem drinker, I'd be saying not to drink at all. It's okay for the likes of me. I'm not that into drinking, but when I do, I only have a drink or two. Like I'll know, like if I'm having a few drinks, I'll have them early on in the day, because I know if I have 3 bottles of beer at 10 o'clock at night, I won't be able to sleep. And obviously that's going to affect me the next day because I won't get up in time. Then I feel like I won't be able to go for that walk I should go for. Then I feel like I want to eat some sugary foods. Same for everyone, it doesn't help. So yeah, cornerstones for bipolar is obviously medication, sleep, I would say next, and then lifestyle. The cleaner your lifestyle, the better. Like if if I didn't exercise between now and next year, would it get me sick? I don't think it would, but I just feel very, very sluggish. And I'd say too with the medication as well. And you have to remember too, the more exercising you do, the better your sleep like. And I'd say for every condition out there, good diet helps. And I'm not saying you don't have to be, like I would say the 80-20% rule. If you're eating well, 80% fine. There's no problem eating chips and pizzas and that. But as long as you're not eating it 5-6 times a week, if you're eating it 5-6 times a week, your mood is going great. Like, it may not get into a severe episode, but it could be enough. And then to avoid stress, you can find a job that you like, and it's something that you're going to ask yourself, like, what do you consider success? For some people, success is working 80 hours a week but making $120,000 a year. Would I think that a person with bipolar would be able to do that? I do not. I can't imagine how you control the condition, because you'd be working 13, 14 hours a day. Like obviously with everybody needs downtime, but particularly for a person with bipolar, it's very important that they relax, just do silly things like watch Netflix or watch sport. And like look at now and again, like particularly over the last few months, it's been quite busy between work and college and promoting this book and doing stuff like this. That last weekend, I actually didn't do anything at all. I barely left the house, and it wasn't because I was depressed or anything. It was just that my body needed rest, and I just watched soccer for the day and had a nice relaxing day, and Sunday, and just came back then kind of fully life then for the Monday. So relaxation is big as well, you know. Look, you can't avoid stress. You know, we all have stress. It's supposed to be good stress, it's called youth stress, day-to-day stress. But, you know, obviously if there's, you know, if there's a bereavement in the family or something like that, you know, that could trigger an episode. You just need to be aware of potential triggers, you know. And like that, you know, if you have found out you have a physical illness in the morning, that could have complications for your mental illness. It could have complications for the medication you're on. So yeah, it's just you have to keep an eye on it. You know, like do I think about my bipolar every day? Not really. You know, I talk about bipolar every day? No. You know, like, I'm out with my friends and that, we rarely talk about bipolar. If somebody asks me a question about it, I'll talk about it. You know, you just live your life as well. Like, you look at uh, like I seen somebody there was a couple of people online having a bit of a row there yesterday. Somebody said that, you know, they say the people I'm bipolar, and other people say I have bipolar. So the people who said I have bipolar were getting really annoyed at the people who said I'm bipolar. They were saying, "Oh no, look at you're more than that. You know, you're more than a label. Like you know, you can't be saying that." And like, it doesn't make any iota of difference. What does it make? Why does it matter? Like, because outside of the bipolar fraternity, nobody cares less. Like, the reality is you have the illness either way, so you just have to deal with it. You know, I'd be questioning if somebody is that really sensitive about saying I'm bipolar or I have bipolar. If that really is causing them anguish, I'd be thinking like that their bipolar needs to be looked at in a finer detail, because you know you can't be getting yourself worked up about stuff like that. Like, you know, you're going to have a more relaxed attitude towards life, because if you're going to let small little things like that get you annoyed, angry, what's going to happen when something big happens at work? You know, you're going to have to learn how to control your temperament, and a lot of that is maybe doing your cognitive behavioral therapy when you're having negative thoughts or you know, balancing opinions. So you know, if you're getting them, you know, like even like I get them, you know, you always get them, you know, like you might be coming on here, it's like coming on here talking this evening, and you know, there'll be a voice in your head saying, God, you'll probably mess this up, even though you've done hundreds of Zoom sessions before. And you know, it's just a matter of having the awareness to just tell that voice in your head to shut up, you know. So.
Thank you so much. That was great answer. I have one more question before you go. You said before in another interview that bipolar disorder can be a great teacher. So what do you think is the most important lesson that you've learned?
Taking my medication, because and like, you know, that's the danger. You know, I'd have seen counselors in the past that would have been anti-medication. That would have been a significant reason that I would have come off the medication as well. You know, you'll have counselors that say, you know, that it dampens your emotions. I can't say it does, not in my, I know maybe for different medication for schizophrenia, it may have that effect, but the medications for bipolar, I don't see it. Yeah, so from being a person that was very anti-medication, I learned to realize I was wrong. I, you know, now I see the easiest part of the condition is taking the medication. You know, it's not something I don't even, you know, I don't have that argument in my head anymore. Like, you know, for years the argument was there, you don't need this medication, you know, you're stronger than that, you don't need, your friends don't take medication. You know, you can manage, you know, I used to think you can manage your lifestyle. I used to think, okay, I won't take my medication, but I won't drink and I'll do all the right things, and I still got sick. So the anecdotal evidence is that medication, I don't, like if you said to me you have mild to moderate depression, is medication the answer? It's probably not. You know, you're probably looking at talk therapy then and cognitive behavior therapy. Maybe take a medication for a while, but probably wouldn't be that long term. But as bipolar goes, there's no way around it. And I talk to different people. We don't take their medication, but they still have episodes, and that's a choice they make. But it's a high cost. Like you know, like taking the medication. Obviously, you don't want to be taking it, but like it's more cost to pay. So yeah, I'd be saying, you know, for somebody that hasn't tried medication, give it a go, and you'll be surprised how it can change your life. You know, like I said, bipolar doesn't need to be a prison, and rightly, like people have challenged me and said that you know, just because you take your medication doesn't mean you'll get well. But my argument will be, well, if you don't take the medication, you have no hope of getting well. When I'm talking to 18, 19-year-olds, I'm always kind of saying, I'm going to look at the positives of it. There's plenty of people. Okay, yeah, there are people who can't, they never manage their condition, but that sometimes can be down to lack of insight on the condition. But I would say probably 70% of people who take their medication and gain insight on the illness, their day-to-day lives. Most people would say, if you were talking to my GP, you'd hope that maybe in the next 30 years I might have 1 or 2 episodes, maybe something might happen, but it'll be just a matter of, if I do have an episode, of just taking some time off work and recovering. So yeah, that'd be my leaving message, just take your medication.
Yeah, thank you so much for that reminder and just all the tools that you've given us today and sharing your experience. I think you really made an impact on, I can speak for myself, and you made an impact on me. So I hope you did for all of our audience as well. That's all our time for today, but thank you so much to everyone that joined us. And I hope that you all enjoyed our conversation with Liam. So let's give him a virtual round of applause. If you'd like to learn more about Liam and read his story and his book, High Life, Low Life, Living with Bipolar Disorder, there will be a link to order his book in the video description, as you'll see on the screen as well. Those links will be down in the bio. So thank you all again, and especially thank you, Liam.
Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.